Hello and welcome everyone to another VST plugin review or test, or I don't know. This time I'm talking about EXC snare drum, and if you are a follower of my channel, one of the 444 followers. By the way, can some people unfollow me? I want to have 420. If you're one of these followers, then you know that I've already made a video about EXC snare drum because there is this free version of it. But then the developer saw my video and they liked it, and they gave me actually the free update to the pro version, which I'm very grateful about. This video will be a little bit about the mistakes that I made in the last video, because there were some, and also I will make a recap about the free version so that everyone who is curious what you can do with the free version can have a better view on it now that I gave it some time. And also then I will talk about the pro version and where I see the use cases and what I like about it and stuff like that. So the first thing that I want to say is the difference between analog modeling and physical modeling. In my last video I said that EXC snare drum is an analog modeling plugin that's analogly modeling snares, and it's not true. The developer told me that this is called physical modeling. This is a screenshot of some software that lets developers come up with so-called infinite impulse response filters, which is a certain filter type that is sometimes used to model analog filters. So basically you have an analog filter, like some sort of thing that consists of transistors and all this stuff, and then it has a certain frequency response. So you make an infinite impulse response filter to kind of mimic the frequency response and phase response of that filter, and then you have analogly modeled that filter. That is analog modeling. Physical modeling, however, is a little bit more complicated, as it's more about the room of things. So basically the idea is you make a network of delays, all-pass filters and low-pass filters, and it can get very complex, and you apply that network on just an impulse, and then it will create some sort of thing that represents a certain room. And a snare can also be seen as a certain room, because it's kind of an elliptical room with a certain radius in each direction and a certain height, and it has this metal thingy that creates the dish kind of sound, and it has the thing down here which is for the tock kind of sound, and the material of everything also matters a lot. And yeah, that's snares, and that is physical modeling. It's not just making some filter that kind of acts like something in real life, but it's actually modeling a real instrument that has room properties and stuff like that. Now, before going to the plugin, I just want to show you this nice YouTube channel by Nils Berglund. He is not involved in any of this, and he's also not an audio programmer, if I get it right. He just likes to make cool patterns and stuff. But his videos are very inspirational when it comes to physical modeling, because he always makes these videos where he has some shape in a two-dimensional space, and then he lets some waves start circulating in this thing. And at the beginning they are always very normal and just behave nicely, but then suddenly they reflect from the walls and create the wildest patterns, and it's getting very complex. From a simple start, something very complex emerges. That is a nice way to phrase it. And that is like the essence of physical modeling. You kind of don't just play back a sample and that's it, but you generate the sound. You synthesize the sound from very small and elementary components, so to say. And that is the beauty of it. But that also makes it very chaotic and hard to control sometimes. That is the compromise of it. Yeah, I really love this kind of stuff, and I'm always very excited about something like that. So now going back to this plugin, we start with the free version, and I already put some MIDI notes in here for playing snares. And yeah, there are some parameters. So the tip hardness is kind of a parameter that interpolates between a sound that is more tock, tock, whoop, whoop sort of thing, and something that kind of lacks low end, that has a stronger focus on the higher components of the sound. I like it quite warm, but I don't want it to be too bulky. An interesting aspect that you can already hear here is that one parameter does not just do one thing. Like there is no length parameter or something like that you would see in a normal or wavetable-ish thing. But kind of changing the tip hardness does not only change the flavor of the sound, but also something about the way it decays, and that's why you always have to be very careful with all of these parameters. Then the rim shot. The concept of a rim shot is quite easy. Let's see if that is visible. Okay, let's say I am a snare, and if you are hitting the snare like this, then you are just hitting the snare normally. And if you want to make a rim shot, then you have to make sure that the stick also hitting the start of the edge of the snare, but also the middle, both at the same time. So like this, instead of this. That's a rim shot. And yeah, you can dial in the rim shortness. In funk music, rim shots are often used to put emphasis on certain drum hits. And in metal, I think they're just used in general because it feels a little bit stronger. I like this tuning. Tuning is pretty straightforward. It's sort of tuning the frequencies, the harmonics in this thing. Let's watch a spectrum analyzer while the thing is going on. Snare tension. I'm a fan of short, tight snares, so I don't put snare tension too low. But yeah, it's like, how sloppy is the snare? When it's turned down, it's very sloppy, and you get sounds that don't have a lot of tightness and they kind of take long to decay as well. Turn it up, you get more tightness and they will not take long to decay. Hit position now where you hit on the snare, more in the middle or more on the side. Of course, you get the fuller sound if you're hitting on the middle. One thing I'm wondering though is why it sounds different left and right, because I thought this means that you just select if you go more to the left or to the right, so that the rightest point would be like almost the same as the leftist point, just with the only difference that it's the other side. If the developer watches this video, which is probably the case, please tell me why it sounds a bit different here. Okay, this is the free version, so this is already pretty cool and you can do a lot of stuff with it. Like, I'm not too much of a fan of the randomness, so I could just random and place this thing and then do stuff with it. I could just choose the best snare of it. For example, I like this one very much because it's kind of very down to earth. I also like this one because it's kind of cute. You can just cut these samples and maybe you could layer them with hard panning. You could even think of things like putting an expander on one of them, like on the main snare maybe, to make it a little bit tighter. Of course, when you want to use an expander on snares, then you have to use look ahead to bring the tightness back. And I can mix back in the other two snares. I can use the longer snares to kind of as a background noise, and the main filtered snare as the main sound that is a little bit tighter. Oh, oops, I had this playing all the time. Okay, that's a nice way to start. I don't want to go on with that now because it would kind of be a talk for a different video, but you know, you can make samples with this sound design, and then when you finished a sample that you can render to just one track instead of 3, then you can just go ahead and go on make your music with it, like put it on every 2 and 4, etc, etc. Now let's leave the free version behind and actually talk about what the purchasable version adds for us. So you probably have noticed the difference. The main difference here is that you have a new Cringe parameter, which is a little pop-up window with 4 different things to choose from, and a so-called Sidechain module with 2 parameters, a dry wet parameter and a frequency shift. And you notice that I will not use MIDI now, because the cool thing about this thing is that it actually has an audio input, and that's weird because it's a VST instrument, and I personally didn't know that VST instruments can have an audio input, and that's why I'm saying that so explicit now. This thing has a sidechain input, so it can get audio in. Now I just have to make a track. Actually, let's make a mono track, and we send it directly to Excite. So check. And now I'm a snare. And stuff like that. Okay. Now let's just stop doing that for now, because you don't want to listen to me say rapatapatum all the time. That was just the basic concept of what the Pro version adds for you. And for this special occasion, I actually bought some sample pack from Jake Reed, just to make a little bit of advertisement, because it's very worth it. Jake Reed is a drummer who's also a YouTuber apparently, and one of the things Jake Reed likes to do is just recording himself playing the drums in very elaborate ways with complicated mic setups that are very well thought of, and then making sample packs of that. Like this video does not have a sample pack, but he has made sample packs to some of the sounds he made, and what I like about it is that it's not just some basic standard drum sound, but actually has some themed drum sounds among them. Like the sample pack that I bought myself was the Tame Impala Drum Vibes pack. And yeah, I would highly encourage you to check out this YouTuber if you also want to buy sample packs with high quality drums that have certain themes to them. Now I have the folders that I bought here: fills and one shots, funky beats, pop rock beats. So let's just pretend we want to make a funky beat, like 78 BPM. That's always very funky and laid back. Funky kick or ghosty beats. Let's funky over kick. Very nice and laid back, just as I expected. You can already hear how themed these drums are, because they are not just, I mean, they are dry. Tame Impala is also kind of dry when you don't think of these flangers and stuff, but they are also not just put on your mic and you're done, but like the snare has some really warm dum to it. So the question is, if you have a very cool sound already, can this plugin add something to it? Now what I do is I send this track to Excite via Sidechain, and then it will sound like this. And now you can already see where I'm going. At least I hope so, because the drums by themselves, they sound great and I would totally use them without this plugin. But if I ever felt like I want to add some realism flavor, like some sort of as if it is played live, then of course I would like the snare to resonate with all the other drum sounds, and this is just the plugin that does that. And now all I have to do to further shape the sound is, of course, I could use the parameters in here first, the extra parameters, like one of them is dry wet. The other one is a frequency shift. I'm not entirely sure how that differs from the drum head tuning. Let's check it out. Yeah, okay, it's a frequency shifter. It is definitely different than a drum head tuning. When you use the drum head tuning, you can really hear how the Allpass filters shift in frequency, because Allpass filters always have this metallic tone to them and that makes them very noticeable. Frequency shifters, however, they are also noticeable, but in a way that sounds like some sort of whistling. Let me quickly show you another example after I have set a nice value for this parameter. And now I use another frequency shifter that I very like the Echo Boat frequency shifter. You will hear the sound of a frequency shifter much more apparent in this plugin than in the Excite snare drum, because in Echo Boat the frequency shifter is part of the feedback loop, so that it does not come at the same time as the drums themselves, but like a little bit later, for example in 16th. And also they are frequency shifted on each repetition of the delay. They are frequency shifted up or down by the amount that is set by this parameter. And this plugin also has a nice Allpass filter in it. Okay, enough of Echo Boat. I always really love to play around with this. This is just one of the most creative effects and a very nice use of a frequency shifter. Yeah, that is the advantage of frequency shifting, and I got the same sense of this plugin, because when you turn it up you get these whistling noises. And when you're just slightly turning it down, then you can not only make the sound a little bit tighter, but you can also make it sit better with the rest of the sound frequency wise. Now the crunch parameter, I think it's some sort of downsampling thing, because listen to it. The higher you go with this thing, the more it sounds smoother and less low passish and less bit crushy. 1/4 and 1/2 sounds a bit crushy, so I think that is downsampling. 1/1, so basically just 1, sounds normal. And 2/1 sounds extraordinarily smooth, so I suppose this is some sort of oversampling thing. Not sure though, but that's just the sensation that this parameter gives me. Listen again. what will I do now? I think what would really make sense is asking myself if I can shape the flavor of the noise some more. One thing that you can always do if you want to shape the flavor of things is applying some sort of convolution thing in it. And that is usually done with amp simulations like Boogex, which is, I think that's even a free plugin, isn't it? Voxengo Boogex. Yep, that is in fact a free plugin and a very good one. It's from Voxengo. Most of you already know Voxengo probably because they made Span, the most known free spectrum analyzer, but they also make a lot of other cool plugins like this convolution thing, and it has some different functions, like it has a pre-EQ or something. I have to disable this kind of stuff first so that we can listen to it in the right sequence. So turning everything off, kind of trying to make it sort of an init preset. So the pre-EQ does not work on itself, it's an emphasis EQ, and I think it only works in conjunction with the amplifier itself. And I think this pre-EQ, yeah, this pre-EQ actually gets applied on everything, also on the drive signal. So this is only the pre-EQ for the drive. So let's check out the drive, there are different types. That already sounds much smoother, but the real magic happens when you add the convolver, of course. The only problem with convolution is when you try to mix it with the dry signal, you get a lot of flanging, and that often sounds kind of whack. So sometimes it's either you go completely for it or completely against it. Okay, so that was the big strength of Excite Snare Drum Pro with a very nice drum sampler. and sidechaining, and yeah, then just go for it and you get a nice resonance and response. It sounds like the room and the instruments that are in the room are responding to the sound that you are putting in. Now let us just quickly try something else as well. What I want to try is I want to actually have a different sound in here as well. I'm not really sure how I want to come up with that yet. Maybe it would make sense to just quickly come up with something that we can use then. I don't want it to be too normal though. It should be something a little bit special. I gotta be a little bit lucky now because towel vocoder sometimes crashes the door in my door. But yeah, I think I like to live dangerously today. Okay, so now I have a harmonic sample actually in this project that I can use to also try what the plugin does for harmonic content, even though it was not meant for that. But before I start doing that, I just want to add track spacer to this track and track space the harmonic by the original drums so that the harmonics go a little bit out of the way of the original drums, because I just like their sound so much. Now the first thing I try is, since this is sort of our resonance track, this is sort of the excite resonance, let's just try what happens if we also send the harmonics to this thing. Now we get a lot of more resonance, obviously, but let's just reduce the gain until it sounds sort of reasonable. And now that is interesting because this sounds much more reasonable now, but you get this subtle sensation that there is something far in the background that connects the musical elements with each other that are in the mix. Like the drums and the harmonics, they are now tied together, they are kind of glued, but without a glue compressor, but just with this resonance track, so to say. Now we could try to extend on this concept by adding a bass line. And for that, I will just use the notes that I already have, put 0 to mono, and then I will have to try to find a good tone for the bass. First of all, I will try these notes. Now I will do something similar as before with track spacer, but this time I will only let it affect the low end, and that's why I'm using Pro and B. Track spacer is better when you want to get a little bit more creative, if the effect should be a little bit audible. MV is a little bit more transparent in my opinion. Now external drums. Outside has some nice additional functionality that could be of good use here. now I will send the bass to the resonator. This is going to be interesting because usually when bass heavy instruments resonate on things, that sounds quite interesting. So let's see what happens in this physical emulation of a resonating space. Nice. I want some kind of reggae vibe in here. Nice. Okay, so the next thing I want to do with this plugin is I want to actually play it with my mouth, just as I did in the beginning, because I said in the beginning that I don't want to waste your time doing that, but I actually do want to do that now, because I feel like when the beat's already rolling, then you can just play around with your voice like that. And yeah, that's the next thing that I want to do here, and that's why I opened another instance of Excite snare drum actually, and will not use the resonance one for this. And yeah, new track, and this is a vocal track. Oh, oops, I have to enable sidechain in the plugin, of course. Because the thing is, I want to like just add new rhythms to this composition now, and I don't know if I just keep the sound as it is in the beginning, but that is not the thing where the focus lies on for me. I just want to have a new rhythm in this thing now, and in order to do that I will just jam out. Sorry if this was kind of cringe, but you know, that's being a musician, like, as most of you hopefully know. And if not, then I don't care. So I have a lot of footage here now, and I can just choose the one that I like most. So as you can see, this is now a more creative way of using this plugin. It is not just directly using a pro drum loop and then slapping it on it and boom, you get the resonance of a real room, like the intended way of using physical modeling. Intended in such brackets, because you know this is all creative work and no one comes here and tells you what to do. But intended in the sense of what the developers probably had in mind when they started this project, you know. And yeah, I like to put things into new contexts. And I think that's pretty cool because, you know, I filtered a lot away from the original sound, but you still get the impression that this is a special noise and not just any noise, and that is noise. my conclusion is this plugin as a pro version is kind of a really huge update from the free version, even though it looks like they only added 3 parameters, but they actually added a whole new functionality, which is the sidechain option of this plugin. And it enables you to have a lot of interesting creative decisions, like having a track only for resonating certain instruments, or like just creating very creative sounding noise, you know, stuff like that. That is just the way how you can use physical modeling of snares and other resonators and stuff like that. And I think that's pretty awesome. One thing that I really appreciate is this very unique layout that I've never seen in another plugin before, that it's basically a VST instrument, so it outputs sound, but still it needs to receive sound via sidechain to do its special thing that you actively bought the pro version for. First, I thought to myself, why did they not just make this an effect? You know, that I could just load my drums and then have this as an effect slot. If I type Excite in here, then I could load it as a drums effect, and then I could use the dry mix knob so that I can have some of my original drums and some of my resonating thingy. While I still think that this would make sense, that they would also release a version that can live on its own and does not require another track in the DAW, I think it's actually a smart decision to make this the main plugin, because as you've seen, I can just route multiple things to it, like the drums tracks, the harmonies, the bass, and yeah, I route them to this track in different amounts so that they have different influence on this whole thing. And that way I can make the drums have the most influence and the harmonies a less hard influence, because it just doesn't sound too nice to have harmonies influencing a snare. But then again, the bass line has a higher influence because bass lines resonating with snares are kind of cool. And then yeah, you can just decide how you want to do it exactly yourself, and also you can post-process the whole thing. So this is basically like having a group, but it's kind of not a group but a VST plugin. Because this is so unusual, I think that might throw some people off a little bit, but in essence it is a very similar workflow and I can really get behind it, as you have seen, hopefully. One thing that I still think could be improved about this plugin is that it sounds kind of metallic most of the time. No matter how you drag these knobs, it's kind of hard to get a more wooden character from the snare. I would like to be able to let it sound a little bit more wooden and earthy, and you know, just like tock tock instead of thiff thiff. That's kind of hard to do with this plugin at the moment. But I've already told the developer about that, and they agree that there could be some more work into more variety of how it sounds like different materials and stuff like that. And I think they're on it. So yeah, good work. Another thing that might really make sense in this plugin is like adding a little pre or post expander. That would maybe make a lot of sense. For example, let's just take the drums here. Hey, where are my kilohertz things? Alright, KHS. Okay, so Kilohertz made this little plugin, which is very useful. It's one of their snap-ins. If you know Kilohertz, then they call their plugin snap-ins, the smaller ones. And the cool thing about it is it can act like a compressor if you do this, you know, the typical ratio. But it can also act as an expander, and I like the way this is visualized directly with this ratio thing. And I will now put an expander post this whole thing. Because, you know, of course, this is not physical modeling of snare anymore, and it would kind of exceed the expectations from a plugin that was made in the context of a university project around a certain topic, like in this case, physically modeling snares. Your lecturers would probably say, what the fuck? A snare has no expander in it. Why would you add an expander? So don't add it to this plugin so you get good grades and stuff. But if you ever want to make an upgrade of this plugin where you can be more creative and have the freedom to just add some random stuff that you feel is cool, then I think it would be very appreciable to have an expander in it, like this one, because as you have probably noticed, that tightens up the sound very nicely, and it kind of, this sound kind of asks for an expander in my opinion, because it kind of reduces the natural flavor. But you know, as when you use a bit of dry wet, then that's getting compensated. So if you're somewhere in the middle, you just get a slightly tighter sound, and I think it's pretty nice to just arrive at this setting. It is a very satisfying feeling to have this expander right at the place where it adds the tightness to this snare sound without making it sound like something completely different. And I think having an expander in this context works wonders sometimes. You can also experiment with putting the expander before the plugin, so basically on the drums themselves. It will give a different result as well. I've already tried that, but I don't want to make this video too long. This is a really cool plugin and it's very creative. The Center of Haptic Audio Interaction Research, Excite Snare Drum. Free version €0 and the non-free version €20. So basically you can go download the free version now, experiment a bit with it and get excited about it, hopefully. And then if you think that the stuff that I did in this video was kind of fun, then yeah, I mean, €20 is not too much. I guess go for it.